Have you ever wanted to understand history more deeply, but don't know where to start? You're not alone. The third habit of historically conscious people is the practice of reading history, not just collecting names and dates, but learning how to read well. Reading history isn't about memorizing a textbook. It's about building a way of seeing, a way of thinking with the past, so you can understand the present. Hi, I'm Liam, retired history professor who happens to work in a shed. I'm glad that you joined me today as we talk about this third habit that develops historical consciousness. I'd like to read you a passage from a book. This is a book called Speaking for Themselves. It's the personal letters of Winston and Clementine Churchill, written to one another throughout their lifetime and collected by their daughter, Mary Soames. Now, Churchill was considered to be the most outstanding historical figure of the 20th century because of his courageous stand of leading Britain against the German juggernaut during World War II. When Churchill became prime minister in the darkest days of English history, he's a natural leader, and he certainly had the implicit trust of the English people. There's a letter written to him right in the middle of this time, when things were still uncertain in the war. His wife writes him about a particular matter that she thinks will really help him in terms of his leadership of the nation. It's from his wife, Clementine, written 27th of June, 1940. She writes to Winston, "My darling, I hope you'll forgive me if I tell you something that I feel you ought to know. One of the men in your entourage, a devoted friend, has been to me and told me that there is a danger of your being generally disliked by your colleagues and subordinates because of your sarcastic and overbearing manner. It seems your private secretaries have agreed to behave like schoolboys and take what's coming to them and then escape out of your presence, shrugging their shoulders. If an idea is suggested, say at a conference, you're supposed to be so contemptuous that presently no ideas, good or bad, will be forthcoming. I was astonished and upset because in all these years I have been accustomed to all those who have worked with and under you, loving you. And I said this and I was told, no doubt it's the strain. My darling Winston, I must confess that I have noticed a deterioration in your manner, and you are not so kind as you used to be. It is for you to give the orders, and if they are bungled, except for the king and the Archbishop of Canterbury and the speaker, you can sack anyone and everyone. Therefore, with this terrific power, you must combine urbanity, kindness, and if possible, Olympic charm. I cannot bear that those who serve the country and yourself should not love you as well as admire and respect you. Besides, you won't get the best results by irascibility and rudeness. They will breed either dislike or a slave mentality, rebellion in wartime being out of the question. Please forgive your loving, devoted, and watchful Clemmy." Now that portion that I just read is an example of a primary document in history. It isn't somebody's interpretation. It is a contemporary, somebody who's actually involved in the circumstance, reporting what they saw and what they felt. It's a remarkable letter in and of itself, because through it we learn that even the people of history that we think are impregnable and almost perfect, and even in Winston Churchill's case, especially to Americans, almost deified. But we see that he had a crucial flaw that the one who was closest to him, his wife, was able to see. She told him that he should treat the people who worked with him better. He would get better results. And if you follow up on the correspondence, you see that he took her advice because he valued it. And of course, it was good advice. And we'll never know exactly how great a difference it made, but it seemed to be the wisdom he needed in the moment. I was interested in the life of Winston Churchill and looking for books that might tell me more of how he was. Oh, I had Churchill's books on history. So well written, such beautiful English prose. And yet, sometimes it's hard to get at what the great leader was really like. So I picked up this book at a used bookstore. And because of my reading, I learned something significant about the history I was interested in. And it's affected me. I learned some principles from the past that I can apply today. It's important to get along with and treat well the people who work closest with you, because, as in Winston Churchill's case, the world may depend on it. It's the third in the series of 7 habits of historically conscious people. So let's dive in today and find out what we can from learning to read as a historically conscious person. First of all, begin by reading what actually interests you. Pick people, ideas, or events that spark your curiosity. And whatever you do, don't just rely on Amazon reviews. That's a minefield of bias, hype, and trolls. Instead, ask a historian. Yeah, really. I said ask a historian. Now, the historian you ask may faint from shock because people rarely do. But most historians love being asked. You don't need someone from a big university, a community college instructor, a museum curator, or a librarian can guide you toward excellent books. Ask for 1 or 2 introductory, secondary works, and if you can, a few primary sources. Primary sources are the actual words from people who lived in that time, like Clementine Churchill. Good history books always include a bibliography, and the very best include annotated bibliographies. That means bibliographies that explain why certain works were chosen. Oh, that's a treasure map. If you're unsure, you can check reviews on Google Scholar or the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature to see a book's strengths and weaknesses by reading reviews. And above all, don't be afraid to read primary sources. They let you hear the voices of the past directly, not just someone else's interpretation. Secondly, read well-written history. And style matters. David McCullough once said, history, like all good literature, should be written for the ear as well as the eye. A good history book, pleasure to read. It draws you in. It doesn't beat you over the head with conclusions. It invites you to think, and that's good. Avoid historians who use big words just to sound impressive. History isn't meant to be a secret club. As poet Alok Mishra said, a great literary classic should not require an introductory essay and 10 pages of footnotes to be understood. It should require a human heart and a curious mind. Here's a little trick. Read a few paragraphs out loud. If the rhythm carries you, if the words feel alive, well, you found a good one, most likely. Rhythm, the characteristic of good literature. Read well-researched history and learn that footnotes are your friends. Readable is good, but good history must also be well-researched. You know those little footnotes and endnotes that you see in books? They're not nuisances. They're the essential trail. Reading history is entering a relationship of trust with the author. Footnotes let you test that trust. Some writers hate them. Noel Coward compared them to having to go downstairs to answer the door in the middle of making love. Stephen King joked about stepping on them before they breed. But Maria Popova nailed it. Literature is the original internet. Every footnote, every citation, every allusion is essentially a hyperlink to another text, to another mind. Footnotes lead to new ideas, other books, and sometimes entirely new discoveries. In my own doctoral work, a single footnote opened up a brand new topic that eventually shaped years of research. Fourth, read actively, not passively, being an active participant. Start by previewing. Skim the table of contents, the introduction, and the chapter summaries, if there are any. See, you're scouting the terrain. Here's a trick I call the Columbo approach. Read the conclusion first. Yes, it's okay. You're not spoiling the story. You're watching how the historian builds their case. As you read, ask good questions. Why does this matter? What's the argument? How does this connect to what I already know? Highlight sparingly. Annotate in the margins everything that you highlight. Write down, for example, why a passage matters, what it means, and how it connects to other things that you've already read. Reading as if you'll have to teach someone else is one of the best ways you can make it stick. Fifth, read for meaning, not just facts. A historically conscious reader moves beyond what happened to ask, what does it mean? This is called thinking with history. We don't use the past as a mirror that flatters us. We let it speak with its own voice. Done well, history gives us perspective on our own moment. It becomes a tool to orient ourselves in the present, not to project our present back onto the past. Read with selection and purpose. If we read with intention, that's an important aspect. No one can read everything. Choose the works that matter most. Follow your curiosity, but don't let your curiosity scatter you. Stephen Pressfield once advised, you're allowed to read 3 books on your subject. Wow, really, just 3? Well, what he meant was he's giving it as a way of saying, prioritize understanding over information overload. A mountain of facts can actually block insight. The goal isn't to read the whole library. The goal is to gain perspective and to let the past shape how you see the world today. Reading history isn't a task, it's a habit. Start with curiosity. Choose well-written and well-researched books. Read actively. Read for meaning. Read with purpose. When you read this way, you're not just absorbing stories about the past. You're learning how to think historically, how to live more thoughtfully in the present, and imagine the future with greater wisdom. Well, that's the habit of historically conscious people. Read history, think historically. I'm so glad that you joined me today. If you like this video, then please like, comment, and subscribe. I want to read your comments.